of our meeting. So please, let's do a test.
Dzień dobry, witam serdecznie na drugi dzień naszego projektu.
Good morning. I would like to welcome you today on behalf of the project leader. For us, for Poland, it was a special day yesterday. There was a action held, and we wanted to give you some scarves that were also used during that activity. And we would like to, each of you, or at least one representative from a country, could take it as a souvenir back to your organization. So Asha will give you these scarves.
No, dla Daniela również.
And for Daniel as well, as a token from that demonstration that was held yesterday in Poland.
Dziękuję serdecznie, przekazuję.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to Dominik Owczarek, who will be moderating from now on. Good morning. Thank you very much for this very pleasant opening of the second day of our meeting. And thank you very much for this souvenir. Let it be a token of trade union activity and social partnership, and also our solidarity between trade unions. I'm really happy with what we have done yesterday. We discussed the key findings of our research. We talked about the outcomes of our search, but also we had a debate about how European Works Councils can help to provide information and consultation during this digitalization and decarbonization period. It was a very interesting discussion, I have to tell you. Today, we will continue our debate, but I can see that Romek Jagodziński has joined the meeting, and I have a feeling that his technical conditions are better than yesterday, because yesterday he was still during his journey. So Romek, if you feel up to it, could we perhaps speak about the chatbot? Do you have anything to say? Yesterday, I saw you were trying to join the discussion, but you were prevented by technical difficulties. So maybe it would be a good idea for you to speak during the day. What do you think? Yes, by all means. Good morning, everyone. I am available today for you, and I am in a sitting position behind my desk, so not moving anymore like yesterday. So let us start with our meeting. We have drafted an agenda for today, and there will be three presentations in the beginning, and then we will allot a time slot to you to speak about the chatbot. Today, the agenda is really packed, especially before noon. And we planned for three presentations to be held, and they are to show us the perspective of the employer organizations, trade unions, on the functioning of the EWCs in the context of the amendment to the directive. I have to admit to you that I haven't found any information about the yesterday's meeting on the websites of the European partners. And I can see you haven't found any information either. So, but you may have had something during perhaps informal conversations. So do you know anything about the final shape of the agreement? If so, please do share it with us, because we are keen to hear what is there. And if you don't, then we will leave this conference with a feeling that soon we will need to update our knowledge because the agreement has changed. So we will definitely speak about the amendment of the directive. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the first panelist. Claire, are you with us in this meeting?
Yes.
If so, then I'm really happy. I hope your connection will be good enough for us to hear everything clearly. Over to you, Claire.
I will share the slides. Can you see the slides?
Put it in the full screen mode, please.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Claire Grandfort. I work in the UIMM Labor's Law Department, and I'm a legal advisor specializing in collective labor relations. As an expert on social dialogue and employees representative body, I am also in charge of the European Work Council. What is UIMM? We are an employers organization. We are representing the interest of companies in the following sectors like automotive industry, transport materials or metal industry, metal products. We are representing the interest of our members companies, and we are also supporting them as regards their question on labor law. Metal industry represents 2,000 companies, 99 of which companies are employing less than 50 employees. We are also representing 1.6 million employees, 93% of which are an open-ending contract. UIMM provides advice to companies in the metal industry sector, in particular through its networks of 58 local associations. About EWC, according to the ETUI EWC database, France is one of the countries with the highest number of EWC. 145 EWC, or European company set under French law, all sectors included. France is the second country with the highest number of EWC or European companies behind Germany. The manufacturing sector is one of the sectors with the highest number of EWC. 268 EWC or European company set in the manufacturing sector. This figure include all European countries. Some of our members were pioneers in establishing EWC and set one up before the 1994 directive came into force. This is because we are a sector with a strong tradition of social dialogue. In the framework of the revision of the EWC directive, we ask our members about the functioning of their EWC. When we ask what's the added value of EWC, they replied strengthening social dialogue, improving understanding of company strategy and anticipating social dimension of changes, and improving the circulation of information in the company. The EWC is an important forum for social dialogue in international groups. Some companies have even chosen to extend their EWC to cover a wider geographical area. About the functioning of EWC under French law, French law defines transnational issue as those which concern the entire community scale undertaking or group of undertakings, or at least two undertakings or establishment in the undertaking or group located in two member states. The definition of transnational issue set by French law stick to the definition of the directive. French law gives also a definition of information. Information means that the head of the undertaking or of the dominant undertaking in the community scale group of undertakings or any other more appropriate level of management transmit information to the employees and representative to enable them to become acquainted with the subject under discussion and to examine it. The information should be provided at appropriate time, in an appropriate manner, and with an appropriate content, enabling employees' representative in particular to carry out an in-depth assessment of the possible impact of such data and to prepare, where necessary, for consultation with the head of the undertaking or the leading undertaking in the community scale group of undertaking or any other more appropriate level of management. In practice, some companies have decided to include in their agreement some precision of the information procedure in order to adapt the statutory provision to their situation. In the last part of our intervention, we will give you some example of agreement. The other definition is about consultation. We have reproduced the statutory definition of consultation as set out in the Labour Code. The consultation involves an exchange of views and the establishment of a dialogue between the employees' representative. The EWC then gives an opinion on this basis. Some companies have chosen to specify the consultation procedure in their agreement based on their usual internal operating practice. What are the procedures for setting up EWCs under French law? There are two procedures. The first, the EWC is set up by agreement. The head of the company calls a meeting of the Special National Negotiating Body, SNB. SNB members are appointed by trade unions from among those elected to the Work Council or union representative. Negotiations take a maximum of 3 years. When the EWC is set up by agreement, this agreement has a minimum content covering the scope of application, composition of the EWC, functions of EWC, information and consultation procedures, articulation between European and national consultation, place, frequency and duration of meetings, material and financial resources, and composition of the select committee. The directive has been transposed quite strictly under French law. This list corresponds to the Article 6 of the current directive. In practice, we can observe that companies adapt the content of their agreement according to their way of functioning. It is also important to note that some companies decided to extend the transnational dialogue to countries outside Europe. The second procedure is the statutory EWC is set up in two cases, subsidiary requirements. The first case is if the employer refuses to set up the SNB or to open negotiation within a certain time frame. The second case, if negotiations fail because the time frame is exceeded. In both cases, the statutory EWC must be set up within 6 months. According to our knowledge, we are not aware of EWC set up according to subsidiary requirements of our sector, in our sector. How do EWC work in practice? These findings are based on discussion we have had with our member companies. EWC are functioning quite well. Almost all EWCs are set up by agreement. This generally helps to minimize difficulties during the EWC lifetime. And if difficulties arise, they can be overcome in most cases through dialogue between representative and management. We will now give you some example of EWC provision in company agreement. These findings are based on some EWC's agreement from companies belonging to the metal industry. About the EWC mission, the EWC's role is to deal with transnational issues. The EWC doesn't replace national body. Topics to be addressed by the EWC include, for example, occupational health and safety, group financial and economic situation, production transfer and relocation. Some agreements define the notion of transnational issue. Some other agreements define the notion of information and consultation. As regards the notion of consultation, one agreement provides that the management shall provide a reasoned response to the opinion expressed by the EWC during the meeting or within a short period of time. It is important to give some flexibility to companies in the functioning of their EWC and to find the solution that suits them best. About EWC membership, some agreements stipulate a maximum number of EWC members. For example, some provide for up to 54 members. There are usually full members and alternate members, also a secretary and a deputy secretary, generally appointing for 4 years. Some agreements provide for a select committee. This select committee has been set up to act as the main contact for management. About the EWC operation, an agreement includes provision on material resources like room, interpretation, translation of documents, video projection equipment provided by the general management. Expertise, the expert is appointed by a vote of the member of the EWC belonging to the employees group in agreement with the EWC chairman. Time credit hours in addition to the delegation hour of their local mandate up to a maximum on 1 full-time position, or training, 12 days of economic, financial and social training, including knowledge of the group. Another agreement include provision of on the organization of the meeting. Agenda is set 15 days before meetings. 1 month before the meeting, EWC member receive a copy of the reference document by email together with the annual financial report. Meetings are usually held in the head office. However, the meeting can be organized by video conference. Expertise, we have an annual budget allocated for expertise, 35,000 euros. Possibility of using the budget for 2 consecutive hours to the same expertise. Time credit, the agreement regular members have an annual credit of 15 hours. Assistant secretaries have each annual credit of 400 hours, and the secretary works full-time. And finally, various training courses. Integration training for new members, language training, cross-functional training, and IT training. In conclusion, we can say that in some cases, EWC can be seen as a costly and cumbersome body to operate. That's why many EWC have established a select committee. Other solutions could be explored on this aspect, like developing video conference. The proper functioning of EWCs depends to a large extent to the trust that exists between management and employee representatives. This cannot be imposed by law at European level. And companies need to be able to negotiate EWC agreements that correspond to their specific situation. Thank you.
Claire, bardzo serdecznie dziękuję za tę prezentację.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It has been really interesting, and you have shown us specific examples of how EWCs operate. And this is what we all wanted. We wanted to share and exchange our experiences and our own opinion about the functioning of the EWCs. So thank you very much for telling us about how meetings can be held. Right now, discussions are underway on how the meetings should take place so that the process of information and consultation is as effective as possible, and so that both parties are satisfied. And this perspective from the employers is quite interesting. You mentioned here this cost effectiveness of these meetings when they are held, for example, online or through video conference. I think that when we hear from the employees, they might want to focus not on cost effectiveness, but on the information content provided during those meetings. But that's why we are meeting today, to hear both perspectives and to find common ground, share experiences, and find a satisfactory solution. So once again, thank you for your presentation. And now we're moving on to the next presentation, and this is going to show us the perspective of the employers as well. And I am now inviting a representative of that organization, CMET, to take the floor. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to also have a voice and to represent the employers. But first of all, I would like to thank for the nice present that we received with regard to the shawl that we have received. I will have to find a nice place in our office to put this. So thank you very much. So I'm going to be talking about maybe what has become already old news, because we have apparently trilogue negotiations have terminated in an agreement, but we don't have the content of the agreement yet. So we are still waiting, and we will see how many of the desiderata of the employers will be in the final text. So suspense. First of all, I would like to say something about who is CMET. Then the aim of the proposal, the benefits of EWCs, the costs or desiderata or desired changes in the of the proposal of the Commission, and some conclusions. That's too fast. Okay, CMET is the employer organization, European employer organization, representing the interests of the metal, engineering and technology-based industries of Europe. We are representing 200,000 companies in Europe who give jobs to 35 million persons, direct and indirect. We are a recognized social partner, European social partner. Our counterpart is Industrial. We are a strong advocate for social dialogue and we acknowledge very much the importance and the added value of properly functioning European Works Councils. So we are very happy to be included in this project, this important project of EWC Mentor. So the employer's perspective on EWC, on the proposal of the amend the Directive 2009/38. Well, there are two main aims of the directive. It's to create more EWCs in the scope of the directive and improve the practice of existing ones, and also to have effective enforcement of transnational information and consultation rights. I also mentioned here of the Directive 2009/38, something that was not under revision, so that's nothing been changed about it. And it says that in Article 1(2) of the Directive, European Works Council or a procedure for informing and consulting employees shall be established with the purpose of informing and consulting employees, and shall be defined and implemented in such a way as to ensure their effectiveness and to enable the undertaking or group of undertakings to take decisions effectively. That's also what I have referred to yesterday during the day. So the benefits that we see from our sectors in Europe is, well, first of all, there is no one size fits all. Right? So the underlying philosophy of EWC's directive is and should remain to give the social partners at the enterprise level, who know their company best, the space to negotiate arrangements that suit their circumstances and not to impose a standard for everyone, because every company is different. So it's really about social dialogue, specifically tailored to the company. It provides a healthy climate for information and consultation in a structured way. And this can, for instance, such as the colleagues from France have said about health and safety, it's a really good forum to really inform employees and to discuss with them how can we put much more health and safety on the workplace, and have it really not only in one country, but in all the countries throughout the group. It's about building trusts, and building trusts you cannot do overnight. It takes time to build trust, and this cannot be ordered by legislation either. It's a personal thing. You have to be willing to talk to each other at the table, and this building of trust is very important. Therefore, it is really a good forum also to explain the company's strategy, possible future challenges and changes that might be coming on. It's about informing and reinforcing policies, reconciling also different cultures in different countries, because even if you're working for the same group, the same multinational, there might be different ways of working in different countries, because that is the way that in certain countries things are run. So it's about understanding each other as well from different countries. And this really improves the common understanding of employment related issues among, not only among management and employees, but also among employees themselves. And improving the information flows in a company, supporting employee engagement and facilitating the introduction of cross-border initiatives. That's a major thing as well. So there are only benefits to the EWC. Of course, there are some costs related to that. In the proposal, there was a definition of expenses, reasonable costs of experts, including legal assistance. Expenses shall be notified to central management before they are incurred. So we'll have to wait and see what is in the text. It used to be that there's only one expert, a limit to one expert. That was deleted from the proposal or in the proposal, so we'll have to see. We think that it's really excessive that the special negotiating bodies, SNBs, should really need legal as well as expert advice. Well, that you have expertise, that you share knowledge, and that there's an expert, okay, but too much can be too much. Only notify management in advance without prior approval of management. The costs have to be reasonable, and reasonable is a dangerous term. It's quite vague. So what is reasonable? So this could lead to disputes, and we prefer to have less disputes, or that there's no need for disputes, that it should be clear. Also, with regards to legal costs falling on management, costs regarding the court disputes in a civil case should only be borne by the employer's side, regardless of the outcome of the case. We have a feeling that this might not be in line with some member states' practice and how their judicial system is built up. It also could lead to starting legal procedures without any risks at all for the employees. That does not really promote a healthy climate for information and consultation between management and employees. So there should be a balance in that. And well, as I already said, it should also be left at the level of the member state, because it's their competence really to how their judicial system is set up. About the costs of the role of mediation and conciliation in case of EWC's disputes, alternative dispute resolution and existing mediation practices to avoid unnecessary proceedings in court should be preferred. We are social partners, so talk about disputes at the table should be really, and if there's enough trust and if there is enough recognition of each other's needs, that should be done at the table as well. So bringing a case to court should really be a last resort. Also, the prior out-of-court settlement procedures should really be respected as well. These cannot be if you have agreed on something through conciliation procedures in your member state or between the social partners, and you have an agreement, and then also go to court. That's a bit strange to me, and that should not be acceptable, really. Extensive legal and financial risks, preliminary injunctions to suspend company decisions on alleged violations of EWCs. That's a bit strange as well, to already have to go to court before you start talking. So these are all remarks because we really feel that social dialogue is important and that we really should come together to resolve any issues that might arise. Regarding meeting modalities and frequency and the formats, there was a possibility also for virtual meetings from the recitals in the proposal. It would be good to have this also in the operative part of the text. Possibilities about translation, and very important as well, have safe and efficient document sharing. These days we have to be really careful about cybersecurity as well, and documents that can be shared via a very safe tool such as SharePoint or anything like that. That limits the risk of leaks, for instance. If it's sent by email, it's probably better to have documents on a SharePoint that you can, if you have access to the SharePoint, that you can take them. So these are good things in the proposal as well. About the desired changes, and again, we'll have to wait and see what comes out in the effective text. We think that the changes that we would like are a result of our understanding that there are not many court cases about EWCs in the past. And why is that? Because of the positive outcome of resolving disputes that is being settled in the EWC procedures between management and employees. So not that many court cases. So that's why it seems a bit excessive to have so many proposals, so many issues in the proposal about having to go to court and wanting to go to court. So that's a bit strange. The revision of the directive in a way that ignores really the business needs to runs counter the shared objectives of creating more EWCs. It might even be a disincentive for large companies in the scope to create such a forum for dialogue. The proposal of the directive that was put forward does not fully preserve the ability of management to take decisions effectively. We feel it does not respect Article 16 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom to conduct a business. So there's a balance there. What we feel is that existing EWC agreements should be out of the scope of the proposal. So the pre-existing agreements that are concluded before 1996 or before 2009, 2011 should be retained and protected in their current structure as long as they are valid. And there should not be automatically a mandatory for existing EWC agreements to renegotiate everything. So for us, Article 14 of the Directive 2009 and the exemption from the scope should really be kept. Then on the definition of transnational, there should be no presumption of transnationality. So if it's about one member state, an issue of one member state, it should really remain to the social partners of that member state to, in their forms of works councils of the national level should be taken into account. There should not be a risk of overlap between the national information and the consultation procedures and the European Works Council. So there's a balance there as well. We feel it would be better to have in the definition, if it's about the measures considered by management can reasonably be expected to affect workers in one member state, and workers in another member state can reasonably be expected to be substantially affected by the consequences of these measures. So substantially would be really important for us. Because in practice, otherwise, every decision that would be affecting one member state will have to be analyzed and to assess whether or not it could affect also the employees in another member state. We should keep it as reasonable as possible and not make it too burdensome and also not too costly. The reinforced consultation procedures, there is not really I had some slides on transnationality as well. There's no co-determination. It's about information and consulting, but not co-determination. So there's really a balance to be taken there. EWC can express an opinion before the company adopts a decision, and now it is written in the proposal that the reasoned written response from management before adopting a decision is necessary. So we have to be careful that this is an employer's prerogative. It should really be without prejudice to the responsibilities of management, because management have responsibilities as well. Unnecessary administrative burden to have formal requirements on written communication, it stands in the way for companies to take decisions effectively. So there's a balance to be taken. Again, EWCs, it's about social dialogue. It's about informing and consulting employees in the best way possible. And in general, it runs very good as well in EWCs. About confidential information, it is down to the member states in national legislation to give the possibility for central management to provide information in confidence and set adequate transmission, and storage arrangements. And companies should not have to give reasons justifying the provision of information in confidence. This confidential information, it is vital really for to have strong confidentiality rules. The justification, to have to give a justification by itself already could pose a risk. Alternative dispute solutions and penalties. The result of alternative dispute resolutions must be respected, as I already mentioned, in the benefits or in the before, and it should not be able to be followed by judicial procedures. Also about the penalties, the fines, the sanctions. These are GDPR-sized fines. They do not really have a positive role to play in labor relations, and that would really seriously harm or damage the cooperation and trust between social partners. If you have really the Amazon kind fines that the Commission gives to some companies as well after they have, well, broken some European legislation. This is about trust between social partners at the company level, and it would really increase the risk of social dialogue becoming adversarial. So there must be a balance between the sanctions and what the sanctions are for. And also, after the sanctions, you have to sit again at the table and to start a dialogue again. So in the continuance of the dialogue, there should be reasonability about the size of the fines. In conclusions, I like to just conclude by what I said in the beginning. EWCs is an important tool at company level of social dialogue, and it's tailored. It's a tailored size social dialogue specifically. It's about building trusts, reconciling different cultures in different countries. It really is a forum to explain company strategy, possible future challenges and changes. And it's about improving common understanding, informing and reinforcing policies throughout the whole companies. That's really one of the many good things of EWCs. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have that I can answer.
Dziękuję bardzo serdecznie za tę prezentację.
Thank you very much for this presentation. This was very interesting and it was very specific because it mostly focuses on the proposal of the employers on how to amend the existing laws. I think that what we have heard today is consistent with what we have been hearing so far and what we have been presenting in the introductory report to our meetings. So we had the opportunity to listen to two very interesting presentations showing the situation from the perspective of the employers. They both highlighted the importance of EWCs to build trust, to engage in social dialogue, and to become true partners. And I think nobody disputes that EWCs are a real foundation of the European social dialogue, and I hope nobody will challenge that. And now we will hear from the employees. Our colleagues from the Portuguese trade union have prepared their presentation, so I'm happy to hand over to them. And later on, we will simply have the opportunity to discuss these two points of view, really, which are a bit different. Good morning, everyone. Later on, we indeed have to talk because these two approaches are different. We will provide an overview of the costs and benefits of EWCs and employee expectations. As you know, there was a technical problem, but it's over now. As far as international trade union organizations, we believe that EWCs are simply irreplaceable, indispensable, and they operate on the basis of the directive, which is going to be recast. And the purpose and objective of EWCs is for the employees to be able to talk to each other when they work for a transnational company, multinational company. So it is to establish the solidarity between team members from various member states. Okay, so first of all, let me talk to you about the costs. So there are some costs which are usually paid for by the company according to the directive. But from the point of view of the employees, they also affect the goals of the EWC. So if there is travel cost to go to an EWC meeting, it's just one cost. We also have the cost of translation and interpretation if the meeting is held in various languages. There is also the cost of technical support and cost of legal support. There is also the cost of training for the EWC members so that they can understand the economic and legal questions. Even though the costs are paid for by the companies, there can be some budget constraints imposed by the company which can affect the effectiveness of the EWC operation. And from the point of view of the employees, we believe it's just the indirect cost of losing their say in what is going on in the company. And these costs are paid for by the companies, but the members themselves, they also pay some cost because they need to be available, they need to be accessible, and they play more than one function usually in a committee, in another group. So they have to spend additional time in meetings. They also read to documents. They need to consult with other colleagues and team members on important matters. And also it's difficult to talk to teammates from other countries because of the language barrier or cultural barrier, and it takes more time and more effort. Also, we have unequal access to information. And this boils down to the question of information and consultation. So even though some legal obligations are imposed on the employer, it's difficult for employees to access information about the company. We also have some strategic and political costs. What do they relate to?
Das expectativas não correspondidas, tanto quando os conselhos de empresa.
So the expectations do not reflect the reality. Let me put it in a different way. EWCs are not decision-making bodies. So this can be a source of frustration for employees, and they may lose the confidence in the structures that they represent them. And there is also a risk that an EWC may be exploited by the employers. And some team members may also consider EWC members as spies, or let me not use the word spies. They will be the management confidant, and who will observe the workers and report on them. So this is what may happen.
Pode ocorrer quando, portanto, conselho funciona de forma efetiva, transparente.
And in order to compensate for the cost, the EWC must operate in an efficient and transparent way. Okay, so I've spoken about costs and now the benefits. EWCs offer a lot of benefits for the employees in a multinational company. And these benefits can be, for example, as follows: protecting their rights, strengthening trade unions, building solidarity among people. Also, employees receive information early through the EWCs, and this information can be about strategic moves of the company, such as mergers and acquisitions or restructuring processes. So this is a clear benefit. And this ensures that the employees can formulate their opinion and they can react accordingly to any planned measures. And EWC is not only a communication channel, it's also a space where employees have the right to be consulted before certain decisions are taken at the company. Even though the EWC does not have a veto right, still, if they provide an opinion, they may even sway the employer to change his or her decision to the benefit of the employees. And at the EWC, thanks to the EWC, there is a greater feeling of solidarity between the trade union activists from various countries. Also, EWCs improve the flow of information and they raise awareness on the working conditions, on the differences in salaries, etc. Also, they help to improve the protection of employees' rights. Thanks to EWCs, employees are more aware of any unfair situations at locations of a company, and they can report any irregularities. What else? It helps to monitor the functioning of a company, but it also increases the corporate social responsibility. It also helps to protect the environment better, and it helps to protect the human rights. What else? It strengthens trade unions and also it reinforces the collective bargaining process. EWCs also increase the visibility of trade union activists, and then their position is reinforced in a country. And now, institutional recognition. Members of EWCs can influence some decisions taken at the European level. This, in turn, improves slightly the employee situation in any conflict between the workforce and the capital. Okay, speaking about training, EWC members have access to training paid for by the company. This helps them to prepare to take part in meetings and understand difficult issues such as financial matters, European policies, restructuring policies, etc. As regards employee expectations, then from the point of view of the employees, the current directive from 2009 is outdated and is full of gaps and errors, and employees would like many changes regarding EWCs so they are better embedded in the transnational companies and the interests of employees are better protected. So what are our proposals? First of all, consultations should be binding on the companies, because what happens now, consultations are held after this decision has already been taken. So they are actually ineffective. So what do employees want? They want the consultation to be held before the decision is made, and they want the companies to only be able to take a decision after the consultation process has been carried out. So, sanctions and penalties. Right now, many companies violate the rights concerning access to information, and sometimes they do not face any consequences, or the consequences are really insignificant. We want the sanctions to act as a deterrent. And if the employees do not comply with the law or manipulate the laws or go around the laws, they should be penalized. Also, the information we get are sometimes insufficient, too technical, or incomprehensible. So what change do we want? We want employees to have access to clear information, relevant information provided in advance, well in advance, and we want all this to be defined in the law. And we definitely want the term confidentiality to be defined by the law so that information is not unnecessarily hidden because it was labeled as confidential. Okay, speaking about training and access to expertise and legal consultants, we want the new directive to provide for lifelong training, and we want the training to be paid for by the company. And as for the representativeness of the EWCs, right now, not all countries are equally represented in an EWC. We want this to be changed. Also, we want an equal balance of both, equal rights for both sexes. So we want a parity between males and females, and we want all countries to be equally represented. And finally, I want better integration and better connectivity with the trade unions, because sometimes EWCs operate in isolation from the trade unions, and we believe this should not be the case. If they work hand in hand, they will be better at defining strategies and implementing strategies. Now, the right to collective bargaining. Right now, EWCs cannot bargain. We want to change that. We want to give EWCs the right to engage in collective bargaining and the right to sign binding collective agreements for entire groups. And that's all from myself.
Dziękuję serdecznie za tę prezentację. Widziałem znaki, że jeszcze kolega z Portugalii chciałby uzupełnić.
I can see that our colleague from Portugal would like to add something. Did I understand it correctly? Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of details that came up in Alder's presentation. First of all, let me say the following. It is about certain concepts. Our opinion is the following. International corporations would like to have EWCs that could be used as tools that will enable them to make the appearances of democracy in the workplace. On the other hand, workers want EWCs to ensure that democracy in workplace is really there. This is the key difference. And how about our Portuguese experiences? I have to say that big multinationals have the same appearances on the outside, but their operations differ from country to country. So big corporations that started investing in our state in the 1990s, for the first decade or so, functioned in a difficult environment. The situation was very difficult. I have to say that it's something we should be ashamed of. Now, multinationals that invested in Turkey, in the energy sector in general, had the following experience. So we had an international company with a subsidiary in Portugal and in Turkey. Our country is a democracy. And in Portugal, in this very period, Portuguese institutions such as labor inspection tried to control these multinationals, as I said, in the 90s. But despite all of that, these companies abused workers. This was true abuse to the limits. First of all, salaries were shamefully low. And let me repeat, I am referring to the 1990s. Secondly, there were many occupational illnesses in the industry sector or in the manufacturing specifically. So these sectors are work intensive. They didn't care at all about occupational health and safety rules. And when the first EWCs were established, these EWCs were established because multinationals were required to establish them. They didn't want that. They had to learn that it was their duty and that these bodies could be beneficial to them too. And in that time, these first EWCs enabled us to improve workplace democracy in these multinationals. So these companies stopped being places where we were selling our work at a very low price in very bad conditions to go back home and rest a little and bring these peanuts to our household. But it's not a concession on the part of multinationals. It was their duty. And I'm saying so, obviously, taking regard of other opinions, but I want to present my point of view. As Helder has said, the directive improved the situation. And then we entered the new millennium. Now, multinationals enjoy huge resources, technological resources. They can boost production while cutting the time needed to produce, improving profits. Huge international and European corporations, or at least corporations present in Europe, have huge profits. It's enough to browse their financial disclosures. It's nothing secret. So we need to think whether we want to continue like that. We have to go ahead. We need to conquest new rights. Now, workers need to be able to take advantage of these huge profits generated by businesses. Workers are an important asset of these corporations. They need to benefit from this immense success. When a large corporation establishes an EWC, what is the cost of the EWC for the company? And where will these costs come from? Will they be passed on to customers? Will the production be costs? No. Every business produces a budget every year. They have to pay the electricity bills and so on, and it has to pay for the EWC costs as well. Democracy costs. You have to pay for it. And these costs cannot be passed on to workers. In such a case, we will sacrifice a portion of democracy. Oftentimes, businesses pretend that workers are important for them. And we often pretend that workers and employers' organizations exist at the same level. It is not the case. One of them give the work their strength, and the others benefit from it, make money on it. The rules do not change. They do not change when it comes to the sales of work. Well, unless a new theoretician redefines the economic theory. So the question is the following: how do we in the European Union, and I'm coming to a conclusion, how do we in the times of digital progress and unlimited resources enjoyed by international corporations. How is it the case that international corporations have no money to pay for the cost of EWCs when we see that they keep paying for the cost of litigation, for instance? You are well aware of the number of court cases where international corporations had to bear the costs. And these issues could have been solved by a debate at the level of social dialogue in European Works Councils. So there's no doubt that both parties should be available to establish EWCs. And as Helder has said, those who have experience of the way in which it works in multinationals is well aware of the fact that they are not operating in a transparent way. Workers need to know what the strategy is, and they learn about it oftentimes after they have been laid off. So for the EWCs, to be effective, they need to be there to ensure workplace democracy. And it is only in this case that we will have workplace democracy that's beneficial to all. Thank you. Thank you for these two opinions from Portugal, emphasizing the importance of values. Workplace democracy is a very strong postulate that was emphasized in particular by our last colleague. You now see the perspective of the workers' organizations, employees' organizations. The points of view differ, it's clear. It's something we've been discussing throughout our project. It also seems that these postulates regarding the desirable changes, amendments to the directive, from the point of view of workers and employers, differ. We have been trying to highlight these differences in our introductory report, now preliminary report, and in materials that we fed into our chatbot. I hope that the summary of positions of trade unions and employers have been comprehensive and correct. Well, now it's a good time for us to try to discuss these positions. Maybe there is an issue, an item that has attracted your particular attention, that is particularly salient today, and that you would like to focus the most. I can see that Romek Jagodziński is raising his hand, so I would like to hand over the mic to him. Romek, over to you.
Thank you for the interesting presentations. If you just give me a second, I need to switch off the translation. Okay, now it's going to be better. So first of all, thank you. We are in a very important moment because, as rightly pointed out yesterday, reportedly a political deal was struck on the compromise in the trialogue, which may be a milestone and may indeed mark a new chapter in the EWC operation. But of course, the devil is in the detail. We heard the contributions from our colleagues from the employers' organizations, which again listed and highlighted that the perspective on the necessity of these changes still is, so to say, different among the social partners, to put it mildly in this way. But there are a couple of points that I would like to simply add on to, maybe from yet another perspective. as a researcher, I worked on these topics, and some points I would like to simply shortly mention. First of all, I am really encouraged by the fact that EWC's work also in view of the management, of the employers, because it is encouraging. It is not easy, as we know. Social dialogue is not always easy. It usually deals with difficult developments in companies, but I was struck by the fact, or by the statement that EWCs in the vast majority of cases work very well. This is not my experience, and the research that we did shows that only 21% of EWCs are informed and consulted on time. On time, as the directive stipulates, means before the managerial decisions are finalized. So from that point of view, there is a lot of room for improvement. So that would be the first point. The second point I wanted to raise goes into the area of enforcement and conflict resolution. And I subscribe with my both hands and my both legs even, that any sort of court solutions and court proceedings are and should be considered the last resort. But it is also the strongest demand on top of the priority list of the EWC members, over 1,600 that we surveyed, who said we need stronger enforcement, we need stronger sanctions. Not because the employee representatives on EWCs want to see their companies punished and damaged in court. This is absolutely not the case. Our research shows clearly that it is because they want these sanctions and these standards for enforcement to be dissuasive. Dissuasive meaning that simply companies cannot infringe EWC rights to information consultation because it is so easy and so cheap. And by cheap, I mean literally in some member states, the current sanction levels are as low, the minimum sanction that can be imposed for infringing EWC laws are as low as a couple of euro. This is not an exaggeration, that's an actual level of sanctions in some member states. And I don't want to shame any of the member states, so I will not mention which ones these are. And for big multinational companies, this is of course not a dissuasive sanction, especially that very often in many countries, there are not even collective sanctions that are imposed on companies, but these financial penalties can be imposed only on individual managers for obstruction of EWC operation. And the second aspect of the enforcement that I wanted to mention, that was also raised by the colleague from CMET, I'm sorry, I didn't take out the name, I apologize, was about the financing of access to courts and financing of legal proceedings. And that it would encourage, that if a change like that is introduced in the new directive, explicitly, that it would encourage litigation. I don't share that view because we already have in many agreements a contractual arrangement between the management and the EWC that legal costs of legal expertise, of legal proceedings will be covered by the management. And in these companies where this is actually the case, that there have such arrangements in their agreements, we didn't see any sort of explosion of litigation, because that's not the purpose of it. The purpose is simply to ensure that an EWC can stand up for their rights in a court of law. And we need to remind, why do we need to guarantee this in law, the coverage of costs, and why some EWCs went as far as to guarantee this in their agreements. Because an EWC, in a vast majority of EU member states, does not have legal personality. The consequence is that they can't even set up a bank account, a collective bank account, because they do not have this capacity as a collective body. So they cannot procure any financial means other than those that are provided by the employer. And it is the employer's duty to provide the means and resources to apply the rights stemming from the EWC operation or from the national legislation. So there is no other source that employee representatives can find in order to get to court, pay court fees, get a lawyer. If this is not guaranteed, many of them are barred, are discouraged from even pursuing court cases altogether. And this brings me on to the conclusion with which I disagree, that we have few EWC cases all across Europe. So far, we have had three court cases before the European Court of Justice that directly were on EWC matters. At national level, we have around 180 court cases, of which we know, where EWCs took their infringements to court. Now, it of course depends on the interpretation. Is this a lot, or is this just a marginal value given the number of EWCs and given the number of years of operation? I will not make a judgment whether this is a lot or not a high number, but please consider the fact that this is no indicator at all, because the conflict at EWC level very often, in the vast majority of cases, remains either hidden or resolved within the EWC. The fact that these 180 EWC cases actually took place means that there could be no other solution, and that the EWC actually had the resolve to go to the court, which is very, very difficult. We asked the question to EWC members, and only a fraction of EWC representatives said, we took the conflict that we had, the serious conflict with management that we had, we took it to court. So this number is not indicative of the conflict level in EWCs. It is more indicative of the fact that it is difficult for both legal reasons and because of financing for EWCs to go to court. And the level of sanctions, again, companies that abide by the law, and this is the vast majority of them, that respect EWC rules, have absolutely nothing to fear because of these changes, because they respect the rules. These rules for infringement, making the size of the penalty dependent and proportionate to the company's turnover, will affect only those companies that on purpose repeatedly break the EWC rules and show disregard for social dialogue at company level. And this is definitely, I am pretty sure of that, this is definitely not the kind of companies that our colleagues here represent, our employer representatives here represent. So I don't really understand so much the fear. I mean, I do, because you are trying to, of course, defend the interests of all companies. And there might be the fear on the part of employers that now we will have an explosion of litigation, of EWC-led litigation. But I don't think that from a research point of view, there is any justification for that. And yes, you are absolutely right. EWCs are about trust. And this trust needs to be built over years. But many EWCs are also, unfortunately, about frustration. That an EWC, as the recipient of information and consultation, and the management as the key holder, the gatekeeper of this information, very often has the power to frustrate social dialogue because information is not shared on time, because EWCs, this positive role that the EWCs can play is not exploited. They are not given the chance to do so. So I am all in for improved social dialogue. I am all in for the advantages and the added value of EWCs. But with the current legislation, I do not think that this potential is being used to its full, definitely not to its full, definitely not even to its half of potential. And I think it's a resource also for companies, because employees are the ones that are the most interested in actually keeping their workplaces, improving processes. And in those cases where management actually allows them and treats them as partners, involves them early on in the dialogue, does not obstruct the information flow by abusing confidentiality. In these cases, it works really as a benefit for companies. And on the last point, and this is where I'm finishing, I'm sorry, you know, the confidentiality provisions and the criticism expressed towards reinforcing the right to justify when confidentiality is used. This is also based in research. 40% of EWC members reported that they feel that management, in their view, abuses confidentiality to obstruct information flow. And around the same number, I think it is 35%, if I'm not mistaken, reported that they feel limited in their function as EWC members because of confidentiality. They cannot process the information properly. They cannot share it with the local level, with the workforce, with the Works Council at the local level. So confidentiality does represent a big problem for employee representatives, less so for managers who were interviewed in 2016 about confidentiality. So I think maybe one last point on transnationality, if I may. The presumption of transnational character of matters. Also, the research and the experience shows that a vast majority of decisions is taken at regional EMEA level in Europe or at central level. And very often national management of companies are simply executors of decisions taken at a higher level, at the central level of company. And this is really the vast majority of decisions currently, because multinational companies operate transnationally. They don't see borders, especially in the EU, as any meaningful factor in the operation of companies. So we need to recognize the fact and assume that the level of management at which the decisions are taken determines also the character of these matters that are being discussed. In plain English, if a decision is taken at central or regional, supranational level, if you will, then it is transnational in its consequences. And the management has all the means and information to prove otherwise if this is not the case. I think that this reinforcement is also justified. And the reference to the substantial impact, well, the colleague from CMET mentioned that in the definition of reasonable cost, there might arise, that it's a vague term, and then that confusion might arise. What does it mean to for costs to be reasonable, the costs that need to be assumed by the management in the case of litigation? With substantial impact, it is exactly the same. You know, that's not a sharp term, and from a legal point of view, it's very difficult to define it, and it will also continue to represent a challenge to define what a substantial impact is if we remain with the old definition. So I'll conclude by saying I am very curious to see what the exact wording of this compromise at the trialogue is, and also another indication that the devil is in implementation. We will need to see how this new directive is transposed to national level, because it will be key, absolutely key, to see how this is implemented at national level. And it will have an impact for enforcement provisions in several EU countries that will need to introduce a new sanction for administrative sanction for companies, which is in some countries currently not available at all and not known by the legal system. So sorry, I didn't mean to be that long, but it was such an interesting series of presentations that I couldn't help myself. Thank you.
Dziękuję Romku
Thank you, Romek,
za ten
for
komentarz.
this comment,
Bardzo ciekawe argumenty tutaj
for your feedback. You have presented some very interesting arguments in your contribution. We were listening to it attentively, and you have enriched our discussion, and you have deepened our understanding on how the EWCs operate, and you have helped us understand the discussion around the new directive. And I believe that both the trade union representatives and employer representatives would agree with some of the points you made, although there might be also some differences. I would like to emphasize that, yeah, I wouldn't be myself. It would be out of my character not to note that the recast agreement was actually adopted during Poland's presidency, because currently Poland is the president of the European Union. So we are really happy, and the Institute of Public Affairs and our expert here can be really satisfied with that. And I hope this new agreement will have a tangible and durable nature, and I'm looking forward to the final wording.
Przepraszam, może teraz przedstawiciele
Maybe now the employer organizations would like to take the floor and somehow respond to the comments that have been made by our colleague from Portugal and also by Romek Jagodziński. Would you like to present your feedback and take the floor now?
Proszę bardzo.
Very well.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for this interesting discussion and the points of view. And we knew up front that we would have different views because that's our role as well. Maybe just some small remarks because we can agree to disagree on many points, but it's maybe interesting to see that, yeah, indeed, the devil will be in the detail. First of all, we need to see the texts and see what is really written in the texts that have come out of the deal, the political deal that has been reached. And then as well, so as you said, that how will it be implemented in the different national laws, so in the member states. So we all have our roles to play in the transposition of the directive in the national legislation as well. And then we have to see how it works in practice. So I think we're all really excited to read the texts. Maybe we will not be very happy with it. Maybe you will not be very happy with some points. We'll have to wait and see about it. Maybe about what you said, that the EWC is not a decision-making body and that employees may lose confidence in EWC. I can understand that, that it's not very easy to have discussions on something and then you cannot, in the end, make the change into the decision. So it is indeed not a decision-making body. It's about information and about consultation and not about having a word to say in the decision as well. So I understand the frustration about that. It's one of these things that that is just simply not the case, that it is a decision-making body. But yes, that will have consequences about the engagement that you would feel into the EWC. Also about the different levels, that information that you might receive at the EWC level and that you cannot share with the colleagues from the national level. That is really the interplay of where the national works councils of a company and the EWC, where there might be some overlap, and that is a difficult field as well. Where is this crossroads? How to tackle those things, because those are also about the situations where there are maybe going to be consequences for the workforce, and that you want to share with the workforce that might be going to be affected. So I can understand that that's really a difficult issue to tackle as well. It's yeah, sometimes it's too technical, the texts, and yeah, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It's you can have a really beautiful pudding or a really beautiful cake, but then when you eat it, it might just not be sugary enough or too salty, or you want more salty pudding. So the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, and it will be interesting to see how what the text will finally say. Thank you.
Witam Państwa dzisiaj. Ja również się odniosę jako...
Hello, I would also like to respond on behalf of the employers' organizations. Our Polish organization maybe does not have that rich experience as was presented by my colleagues from two other employer organizations, but I'd like to say that an EWC is an information and consultation body. It's not a decision-making body. The information, however, must reach the EWC, and it must reach it well in advance, in good time, and it must enrich the knowledge of EWC members about the plans and decisions of the employers. But of course, this topic is quite complex. And this is an international body. We have various conditions in countries, and it's difficult also to reconcile the interests of both parties. And it's difficult for the managers sometimes to find the best language to speak to the EWC and to prepare the information for EWC that will be then passed on further to other people. When I talked to the EWC members, I heard a comment that sometimes the information reaches too early and the information is not yet fully credible, and it may also create chaos because there is this knowledge and there is the question of how it will be passed on to other people and how it will be understood, and also how it may affect the company's economic situation and financial situation, because some of the topics communicated are quite complex and they can be interpreted in various ways. And also, even though we are all members of the EU, we have our own legal systems, and that's why the understanding among the EWC members might not always be perfect. So there is the huge role that the dialogue and mutual understanding can play. Thank you very much for this contribution. I can see that more people are willing to take the floor. Helder, over to you, and then Romek. Thank you for giving me the floor. I just wanted to add one thing. There is this recent phenomenon, and we've all experienced this. We can see very clearly that the involvement of staff in some decisions of the company is very important, and we could see it during COVID. Thanks to employees, some companies continued to exist during COVID. They were able to operate almost with business as usual. And why was this the case? Because nobody else but the employees knows the ins and outs of the company, and their involvement is crucial. Let's say we have a factory and we have some workforce, and sometimes they need to tackle and struggle with the solutions that are being implemented. And the person on the shop floor knows whether a solution will work or not, because they have the experience. And also, we know that it's very vital for employees to be involved in decision making. You need to consult the employees on matters related to health and safety and other matters. No matter what laws apply, it's important, it's paramount that you engage employees, because they know how to ensure the solutions work. Because sometimes we have seen consultation and information after a decision has already been made by a company, and we lose confidence. And why is that? Because sometimes the management is only informed when the decision informed of the decision when it's made, and maybe the employees sometimes think maybe it's our fault that we found out so late, and then they lose trust. But there's one thing I want to say finally: the involvement of employees is crucial for the effective operation of companies. Thank you. Romek, over to you.
Thank you. So just to follow on a couple of points that have been raised. This frustration, I don't want to be misunderstood. The frustration by employee representatives that I met is not because they don't have co-determination powers. I think trade unions are the first to emphasize and really nail it down that EWCs do not have negotiating power as such, because the negotiating power remains with the trade unions. And we can be sure that this is going to be defended by the trade unions, because it's their stronghold, it's their competence. So the source of frustration is not here. The source of frustration that I mentioned is that the information and consultation take place by management in 80% of cases once the decision was taken. So EWCs are consulted and informed about things over which they have by default immediately a marginal influence, if any. You can only include the view of employee representatives if you inform and consult them early enough. And here I see a large scope for educating also managers that work with EWCs, that they need to design the decision-making process in such a way as to ensure this information consultation phase as part of the managerial decision-making process, respecting, of course, that the fact that the final decision-making competence lies with the management. And I'll be very blunt. I repeat it to many EWCs, but I think that this message should also be communicated very clearly to managers. All the management is expected to do, all that the companies are expected to do based on the EWC directive is to inform and listen to the opinion of an EWC. They are not bound by this opinion. So all they have to do is just give this space to voice concerns, ideas, counter proposals, alternatives by employee representatives. And the frustration is here exactly that even this is not being respected, this sort of a correct timing of information consultation. So I wanted to clarify, because it's super important, that the expectation to co-determine at EWCs, in my experience, is simply not there. The second point about confidentiality, I couldn't agree more. But I think, again, that there is a sort of misconception about confidentiality, admittedly on both sides. the way I see confidentiality is it's absolutely necessary and justified because indeed, if the dialogue is of good quality, sensitive matters should be part of the dialogue between management and employees. So confidentiality is supposed to create a safe space for this exchange, for these discussions. But the moment confidentiality is being used too often or abused is when an EWC comes to every year to an EWC plenary meeting and is presented with a presentation deck of 80 slides, and all of them are marked confidential every year, year over year over year. You know, and that's the frustration, that this is clearly an abuse, where this information is considered to be so secret by management that to be on the safe side, we are excluding all of it from open communication. And I think that this is part of the responses we got from EWC members, that this is what they are also frustrated about. They are not per se against confidentiality as such, because vast majority of them or all of them understand that this is a necessary part, that this safe space needs to be there for companies as well, and it's justified. But you know, the proportion has to be there, that this is a confidentiality is sort of an exception to the normal rule that we exchange information, and an EWC is considered also an insider of a company, that they are not considered a bunch of guys who come from the outside of the company and want to get privileged access to some internal company info. So all this together, I think I can afford to say that my dream sometime is to conduct a training, not only for employee representatives, but for a common training for managers and EWC members, where we could elaborate a common understanding and a better mutual understanding of how EWCs operate, should operate, what are the expectations on both ends. So I think this is it. If we want to consider EWCs indeed the key resource of companies, which is now the case in the 21st century, that the people who work for the company are the key asset, I believe that more prominence needs to be given to considering their representatives a partner, a contributor to the company decision making. And I could go on. We have a whole bunch of research showing how workplace democracy benefits companies at large on many aspects that I will not enumerate here, but it's really beneficial. It not only does not have a negative effect on company operation, but it has a measurable positive effect, or there is a correlation between workplace democracy and good company performance on many aspects. Thank you.
Dziękuję za ten komentarz.
Thank you very much for this comment. And I can see that our colleague from Spain would like to take the floor. And yes, a representative of employers. But please be brief. Please be brief, because we have only 5 minutes before the break, and I also have some technical announcements. So please go ahead.
Bien, gracias, Dominic. Totalmente de acuerdo
Thank
con
you,
la
Dominic.
anterior, ¿no? Dices,
I agree 100% with Mr. Romek Jagodziński. I believe it is crucial for relationships between workers and employers to be based and rooted in democracy. Going back to confidentiality, it is crucial to understand the reason why a piece of information has been classified as confidential and how long this confidentiality applies. If I go to an EWC meeting and get some information and then cannot pass such information to my colleagues, what is my reason for being there? It makes no sense. And as Mr. Jagodziński has said, sometimes everything is labeled confidential. And it happens at times that something is labeled as confidential, and a few days pass and the information is released to the press. So, indeed, EWCs lose their credibility, and it is a feeding ground for frustration. This is why most of the information that is being passed on is simply useless. So decisions have already been made, consultations are not productive, and is all reminiscent of a theater. We simulate democracy while the decision have already been made. Let me just tell you something about what has happened at our EWC meeting in May in Luxembourg. It was an EWC meeting of ArcelorMittal. So the management upheld its position and refused to identify and to share information regarding the relocation of factories to India. They simply told us that some production capacities will be moved to India, but no details were given. So the information is crucial for all European businesses, but no details were provided. And many of our colleagues say that the information they get is insufficient to meaningfully engage in the consultation process. So this is just an example from yesterday of how important data is being withheld in major corporations such as ArcelorMittal. And this case shows us yet another time how things are. So we've been observing the fact that most of the people have identified a lot of field for improvement because EWCs are not working effectively. Thank you very much. And the last speaker before the break, the representative of employers.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Just quickly, maybe the difficulty of the effectivity of information and consultation procedure is that the economic world is changing very fast. And it's also difficult if you have a very complex information and consultation procedure to implement it very properly. What I wanted to emphasize is that one of the aim of the revision of the directive was to help the development of a new European Works Council. I don't know exactly what will be the content of this revision, but I fear that if there are too many strict provisions, too many cumbersome provisions, it will not encourage company to set up new European Works Council, and the revision will have miss one of its goals. Thank you.
Dziękuję za ten komentarz.
Thank you very much for this comment. Well, we have to stick to our schedule. It's already 12 o'clock, so in line with our agenda, I would like to suggest we take a break in a moment. But before we do so, I have two technical announcements. One, please fill in the evaluation questionnaire that you can find in paper form as a hard copy in front of you. It is a useful mechanism that enables us to improve our projects in the years to come, so please remember to fill it in. And I have yet another request. Let's take a family photo. Yes, so before we leave the room to have a coffee, please let us move on to the other corner of the room under the TV set near the window, and it will be a tangible proof that we met in here, that we engaged in our discussion, and we will use this photo in our social media. We'll publish it on the internet. So if somebody doesn't want to be in the photo, you have the right to refuse. But if you want to be in our picture, I would encourage you to take one with us, and we'll be back at 12:30. our meeting. Thank you.
From yesterday? Yeah.
Dobrze, okej. Chyba już jesteśmy wszyscy gotowi, przynajmniej ci, którzy
Okay,
wrócili
I
po
believe
przerwie
we are
kawową.
ready,
Takie intuicje właśnie, że
unless those of us who returned following the coffee break. Well, this is what I feared, that this marvelous weather will pose too strong a competition to our fascinating discussion on EWCs. But we are almost there. Please bear in mind that it's been a decision of our project leader and of all of the partners to cut our second day short, so we will call it a day before lunch. Also today. So, even more so, I really want us to make sure that we have exhausted our agenda, and what we have planned for this session is the presentation of the final report. This is the key product, key deliverable, and the effect of our joint efforts within our partnership. And this is the task that I would like to pose to all of us. So, let us think about the recommendations that can be derived from our project. But before we reach this point, I would like to briefly summarize the project or the project report. So you can see the structure of the report here on our slide. Following a brief introduction, we have an overview of project activities for all of those who are not familiar with the project or who would like to review them. And this is followed by the specific chapters summarizing our project activities. First of all, as during our conference,
opisane są wnioski z
there is a description of the mentoring module. Subsequently, we move on to the conclusions from our chatbot experience, including the description of the tool itself, the reasons for its uniqueness, and so on. Then a chapter on the revision of the directive that provides an overview of the perspective of trade unions and employers' organizations. For obvious reasons, these 2 points of view are presented separately. It requires no further explanation, and a chapter on conclusions, as well as references we relied upon. I believe that this structure is not surprising for any of us. So, let me move on to this final item that might be the object of our discussion. The first draft of this final report has already been prepared, and maybe you have already received it. This is the information that I have received from the organizers, that the report in the English language has been sent out. It has not been translated yet. So you can have, you may get a general idea of what the target version will look like. But it's not the final version yet. So it's a great opportunity for us, so that this first draft could still be modified, transformed in line with our wishes and our decisions. So if you have a look at this slide, I have listed here our conclusions and recommendations from the mentoring program. So let me present them very briefly, and then we will think whether they are exhaustive or need to be supplemented. First of all, I have emphasized the fact that the participants of the mentoring program, as well as the mentors themselves, underscored its importance for knowledge building and raising awareness of the functioning of EWCs, limitations, opportunities, rights, nuances, contexts. So this mentoring program seemingly is quite useful. Obviously, I will not explain differences between the mentoring program and the training programs. This is something we discussed at length yesterday. In any case, this mode of working that is advisory based, that's tailor-made to meet the needs of the participants of the mentoring program, of the specific mentees, has been appreciated. The solution seems to be apt and relevant and is being viewed positively. The subsequent comments regard the improvement of the various aspects of the program. So the proposal that has been raised is about the use of the various modalities of learning. So the application of the different modalities of interaction between mentors and mentees. So in-person interaction combined with online collaboration to improve the engagement, accessibility, and so on. All of us are well aware of how dynamic our environment is. So it is difficult to find joint slot on the agenda to meet and discuss something. So supplementing in-person meetings with online meetings is one of the recommendations, and to treat them as equally valid forms of mentoring. Yet another proposal regards adjusting the mentoring content to the level of experience of the mentees. Well, it's a common sense conclusion. This is what it should look like. Our colleagues have already emphasized the fact that it indeed has taken place. So the content was adjusted to the level of experience and knowledge of the mentees. But this comment applies more to the design and the content of the materials that should also contain some basic fundamental content along with the more advanced ones. Obviously, it is a challenge because we know that the scale of experience runs across the entire spectrum, and training materials cannot be too broad. However, we do need to find the sweet spot when it comes to the content of such training materials. As participants of the mentoring program have emphasized, what's particularly valid are some specific case studies and examples. Regulations find their different application in a different context. So it's a good idea to supplement the general content defining mechanisms with some specific examples so that we understand them better and can refer these contexts into our specific needs. Yet another idea is to include presentations in training materials. So not only text, narrative text such as manuals, but a presentation that could be used by mentors. And moving on, Maciej has already mentioned most of these things. To multiply the impact of the mentoring program, we could assume that some of the sessions, support sessions, could be registered, especially those that are on a specific topic and stand the chance of having some more universal value that is not specific to a company. So this kind of sessions could be registered and then shared in the public domain so that all of the parties interested could use them. So this mentoring program would also become an audio tutorial. For some users, it is a very useful form of using support. So these are the recommendations. Yesterday, we had a little bit less time to discuss the improvements to this module, but we have time to do so right now. So if you have any recommendations in this respect, I encourage you to introduce them and we'll be happy to include them in the final report. And we will prepare the next applications for future grants in such a way so that your suggestions are reflected in any future mentoring programs. I don't know if any of you would like to add something from your experience, because you either participated in these mentoring sessions either as mentors or as beneficiaries, as mentees. So maybe there is something else that you would like to share with us. And yesterday, obviously, you could learn about the concept, about our experiences, and maybe you could form some recommendations on this basis. Okay, I see no comments. So perhaps what we could do right now is to move on to the recommendations regarding chatbots. If anything else comes to your mind, please speak up. Or you can send your proposals to us via email. Obviously, it would be great if you could do it rather soon, because the project is about to be concluded. We need to prepare, publish, and disseminate our final report. So if you could do it within the week to come, that would be great. Oh, yes, Lomek is raising his hand. So Lomek, over to you. Speak up. Lomek was one of our mentors. Yes, so I wanted to make one comment. To me, as a mentor who worked with participants The key challenge is to make this mentoring more interactive, especially if this mentoring takes place online, if we are in touch via digital means and not in person. It seems to me that we should work on encouraging dialogue, to making it more interactive, so that we could explore the advantages of mentoring and its distinct nature from a traditional online training where we have a trainer who presents their slides. Do we have questions? We don't have questions, so see you soon. We should try to move away from this model, but my intuition tells me that more intensified efforts aimed at encouraging participants to engage in a dialogue so that they know what is expected from them, that it's supposed to be a dialogue, active participation, possibility to ask questions. We should encourage them to do so, so that it is the added value of this mentoring. This is what I believe. Thank you very much for this comment. I'm making notes diligently, obviously.
Tak, odnotowane.
Okay, yes.
Tutaj zostanie wprowadzona, lista rekomendacji zostanie
we are going to add it to our list of recommendations.
Dobrze, to w takim razie
Okay, great. So let us move on. Unless there are other comments, yes?
Ale nie widzę żadnych.
But I can't see any hands raised. Great. So let us move on. The key recommendation, well, it goes beyond the scope of this project, and this must be said clearly. It is the development and the update of the input that we have created and that we used to teach artificial intelligence appropriate content. Obviously, this is not possible without human expert input that would enable us to verify the content. So this is why I'm already in touch with the organizers, so that the next call for proposals is the one where we also apply for financing of this instrument, the update of the content and the development of the tool itself. It seems to me that yesterday we agreed that this tool could be useful for social partners in building reliable, dependable knowledge on European Works Councils. Yet another recommendation concerns feedback on the content that could be used to improve the quality of the content. So the comments presented yesterday on extending the content by a contact base, at least the one inclusive of our project partners, this is something that should be done so that we could avoid the suggestions given by the chatbot that the user contact Brazilian trade unions. Well, they use Portuguese as well, but it doesn't seem to be the right direction. Yes, so it would help us to avoid absurd answers. Obviously, all of us would be glad if the outcome of our joint project was also used by other trade unions and employees' organizations. We should make even more effort to popularize this chatbot. Probably it should be improved before we disseminate it even more, because it's the best idea to share tools that are of high quality in order to avoid rejection of our proposed solution. So it is better to improve the quality of an instrument than to work on reversing negative attitudes of users to a given instrument. And finally, something that harkens back to what we said initially. So the perspective of obtaining financing to improve this mechanism. So this is the set of recommendations that we have prepared. And taking into account what has been said yesterday, I wanted to ask if there is anything else that should be added.
Na ewentualne uwagi będziemy czekać
Very
jeszcze
well.
po
We
projekcie.
will still wait for your feedback also towards the end of the project. Let's move on now. I think that this part of recommendation about the recast directive was the most difficult part for me to write. I have to admit this. And the difficulty lied in the very much different perspectives of the trade unions and the employer organizations. So we could not make any recommendation as to the merits, and it would simply put myself as the author of the report on the one or the other side. That's why I decided not to present this recommendation, because it's meant to be a common report for both of the trade union organizations and employer organizations. And it would be good if all of us are willing to subscribe to this report. That's why I only stuck to the recommendations for reinforcing social dialogue mechanisms. And also I included some recommendations on how to encourage social partners to take an active role and part in the social dialogue and in any activity among the citizens. Well, actually, this process has come to an end because the new agreement has been signed already, so I will have to modify that part of my report. The social partners also play a very important role in building, in ensuring the changes that will come are legitimate and that they are enforced. And Maciej is here prompting that the social partners also play an important role when implementing and enforcing the laws. And that will be my second recommendation. And for obvious reasons, the social partners are an important part of the European social model. And this right to receive information and to be consulted is a part of that. There is no better way of promoting the EU regulations than simply practicing them, putting them into action. Another recommendation concerns establishment of new EWCs. If you look at the numbers, it turns out that only 1/3 of all companies that could potentially establish an EWC has one. So there is still a lot of room for new EWCs to be established. And many companies simply do not have an established EWC, but they could. So the potential is vast. And also in our project and in other research, we identified that there is a general low awareness of EWCs. There is very little knowledge among people about EWCs. And I'm speaking about Central and Eastern Europe. EWCs are regarded as not a mainstream topic, but as a niche subject that is hardly ever discussed. And to corroborate what I'm saying here, I have to tell you that the EWC team at the All Poland Trade Union Alliance, our project leader is affiliated with, has established this EWC team only 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago. They did it to bring the EWC members from Poland together with other EWC members from other countries to communicate, to come up with common strategies, etc. Polish trade union members have been members of EWCs since the late 1990s. And that team was only established 2 or 3 years ago. So the level of awareness of EWCs is quite low. And we should put more effort into making EWCs more known, more popular. And the final statement of my recommendation pertains to the employers. And I hope this conclusion will remain with us, because often EWCs are considered to give rights to trade unions and to employees in a broader sense. And they need to be beneficial to mostly employees and the trade unions, that generally EWCs are all about the employees. But we've had, even today, in the presentations of our colleagues from employer organizations, that EWCs are beneficial to employers as well. And it's a good idea when promoting EWCs to remember about that. Because often employers simply seem less interested in EWCs because they believe it's just an employee matter and they do not want to broaden their knowledge about that kind of body. And you can increase the interest among the employers when you present all the benefits that an EWC can bring to a company once it is established. So use the language of positives, of benefits when speaking with the employers. And in our discussions, we try to showcase those benefits, positive sides. I hope that my recommendations reflect the interests of both trade unions and employer organizations. I was stepping on thin ice, actually, and I was really cautious when drafting these recommendations. If there is anything you would like me to amend, please do tell me now. It is a short list of recommendations. I'll be happy to expand it upon your suggestions.
Oczywiście, proszę bardzo.
May I take the floor? Of course. Dominic, sorry for my whispering things into your ear, but I wanted you to mention something else as well. And you haven't, so I want to speak about this. Well, we were a bit surprised that the agreement was actually made yesterday. And I want to add something that might be of interest to some countries. It will be interested how this directive will be transposed into national laws. In some countries, it may become quite dramatic because transposition is not an easy exercise. And maybe it's true for other countries as well. That's just, I wanted to add this little comment. Yes, you're right. Absolutely. Before the law can be enforced, it has to be transposed first to national legislation. And at that phase, social partners need to be involved. And this first item that you can see on slide, I can amend it to say as follows: to engage social partners in shaping the transposition of the directive. So I will amend the wording simply. Very well. If there is no further feedback, I believe we can consider this item on the agenda as completed. I'll be sure to amend and finalize this report. I will send it over to the organizer for translation and for publication. And of course, once it's ready, I encourage all these project partners to publicize it on your websites. And also, please do speak about this project. For me, it was an interesting experience. I found the mentoring program really exciting. It was different from a regular or conventional type of training. For me, creating a chatbot is something innovative and interesting. I have never worked on creating a chatbot before. I also had my concerns about working on a chatbot. Once we got information that the grant was approved for us, I didn't even know how to go about creating this chatbot. But it turns out we have completed this, and the end result is quite satisfactory. Of course, there is still room, or a lot of room, for improvement, but the biggest step, biggest milestone has been achieved. Okay. In that case, I want to suggest that we speak briefly, maybe now. Okay, my presentation is over now, and I suggest that we speak about this project. Let's try to evaluate it. It is always a good practice to get feedback from the participants, from the project partners, and just share with me what you liked, what you disliked, and I will use that feedback when submitting further applications to the EU, so that the projects we attempt to accomplish work to your favor, so that they're useful to you, so that your potential is put to good use, because that's what these projects are trying to achieve. So you have this evaluation questionnaire in front of you, but please feel free to voice any feedback now in this room, because of course this survey has a limited set of questions, but when you give me your feedback and add some narrative to it, I'll be happy. I'll be happy because I will better understand what was good about our project and maybe what was not so perfect.
To ja spróbuję podzielić się tutaj.
Well, let me try to share an experience with you. Let me refer to something that Romek mentioned. He was really anxious about how to engage the participants of the training in any interaction or training. Well, I can give you some hints. I have taken part in training of this type. There is this EWC MENTOR in Berlin, and this is a trade union, and they have come up with a very nice practice of energizing the participants, because it's true, when you just look at the slides being presented, then you are just silent and you do not want to discuss. So what the German trade union did was, for example, to first discuss a general topic, and they would split us into groups of 5 people, depending on the number of participants in a room. And then this team of 5 had to accomplish a task. And everybody had 20 minutes or 30 minutes to do that task. So everybody had to get involved. And then, of course, it was interesting. It was just not sitting and listening. And then the speaker for the group had to present feedback about the work of the group. And let me give you a type of task that was given to us. So they had to organize mock negotiations between the employer and employee. And there was this role play in the middle of the room. And it was not boring, it was interesting. And we were given the topic on which we were supposed to negotiate, for example, salaries. And I really liked it. And Romek said that sometimes the participants are quite passive during training, and that's a problem. And perhaps we could use this form of exercise, and it would be interesting. And then people would be willing to discuss or talk. Maybe it's just off topic, but that's something I wanted to share. Well, it's not off topic. That's a very relevant remark that you have made. It's definitely worth using such energizing exercises during workshops. It's an excellent idea to break the room into groups and give them a task or a role play. And they can be an employer, they can be a trade union, they can, for example, if you are a trade union activist, you can play the role of an employer. This will give you a different perspective. This will be like a psychological exercise, and it has a lot of value. for that training. I like this type of training, and I often use it. And let me share with you my experience with this type of training. Often these meetings are held online, and that's a barrier. But what is also problematic is sometimes the interpretation. If you have a multinational group, it's very difficult to split all the participants into groups so that they can use the assistance of an interpreter. If you have two languages, Polish, English, it's still feasible. But if it's a multinational group with more than 3 languages, that would be really tough. And then you can either split the group by the language they speak, and that will not be that beneficial. It will even deprive us of some benefits of such training. If you have just a purely national Polish group and then purely German group, they have no way of trying to think outside the box or walk into somebody else's shoes. And in this type of project that we are carrying out now, this is by definition a multinational language project, and it would be helpful if we knew at least one common language, and it's not often the case. And that's why, like with our meeting, then in this type of workshop, it is simply not possible, not realistic to conduct an exercise like that. But I agree that they add a lot of value, but they are not always feasible. Okay, let me add that for mentoring, this could be achievable, but we would actually include bigger group in the training session, because as an initial thought, we wanted to have just 5 people per training. So we would need a bigger group to be able to organize an exercise like that. Okay, for EWCs, I believe it's very important to practice or even to form soft skills such as respect to each other, communication skills, communicating without aggression, active listening, etc. So these workshops on soft skills could be really very exciting and could be very useful, and they would create something which we all want, winning trust and building social partnership among the partners. So perhaps if we have a follow-up project, we could put greater emphasis on that, because usually what we mostly focus on are regulations, and in this project we focused on the recast of the directive. There was no alternative. It would be a mistake for us to do anything else, because that's the most relevant thing now. But perhaps in a follow-up project, we could focus more on building soft skills. Very well, over to you.
Thank you. So this project for us, for our organization, was like introduction of EWC. So we open a window and look there what is going on. And I want to tell you that a few months ago, maybe 2, we make a survey to the head of our trade union organizations. And one of the questions was about, do you know about EWC? So less of 10% tell us that they know about this, but When we spoke with them after the survey, we understand that they think that EWC, it is a trade union. So less than 10% know about this. Next, I want to tell that in these 2 days, we had a much about pluses and minuses of EWCs. We had about criticism some and profits of EWC, but this the fact that it is a working mechanism, and it is true. In case of Ukraine, it will be interesting, and we think also it will be work because when the war will finish and in Ukraine will be a peace, so we'll have a rebuilding of our country. And for now, our government tell us about that many transnational companies will go to the economic sector of Ukraine, industrial, and it will be the case in our Ukraine to begin to work and to create EWCs. Next, I want to say that this project, I think, is successful because, you know, we have projects when we meet together and talk something. This project is grateful really because we product something, chatbot. And chatbot will live after the project. We think it will be more successful development. It will live further. And I want to thank for leader of this project, for moderator Dominique Ovcharek, as always, is the greatest, and Maciej, and all Daniel and Miriam who help us. So thank you very much, and we wish all peace. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Trudno jest powiedzieć
Thank
cokolwiek.
you very much. It's difficult to say anything following what you have said. We are extremely grateful that you are a partner to our project and that you are making so much effort to be engaged in our activities. Your physical presence here is also a proof that this topic is interesting to you, and we appreciate it. We appreciate it given the obvious context in which you operate. Obviously, I am referring to the incredible, unimaginable difficulties caused by the ongoing war against Russia. Thank you very much for that. Okay, do we have any other comments? Any other comments regarding the assessment of what has been going on and the improvements for the future? Okay, so Helder and then Romek.
Okay. Obrigado. Relativamente a este projeto,
Thank you very much. So when it comes to our project, I believe it's been very important. Not only because we have developed this tool that will be very helpful in the future, and I am referring here to the chatbot. We all know we need to improve it. Nothing is born perfect. Nothing is perfect from the onset. But we see that new opportunities keep coming up. A revolution is underway. But this tool, which is supposed to be useful to trade unions or to people in those countries that information about European Works Councils is less available, this tool will be very useful for them and will help them to establish EWCs. It was a very good project, and this meeting, actually meetings in person, it is something we should go back to in the world, because we can connect online from all over the planet, but nothing works as well as in-person meetings. The level of interaction is much better. Not only can we share our ideas, our experiences, but we can just get stronger together. And this is the key key element of such meetings, especially where diversity, the number of countries and organizations represented, be it workers' organizations or employees' organizations, is invaluable. And as we have said, our tool needs to be improved. And this tool or any future tools that will be developed will be important, as well as mentoring that will force us to create a network and to produce content that will make it easier for us to explain the ideas to our colleagues and will support us in the process of information. So mentoring is something valuable. So to sum up, it is one of the projects where deliverables are numerous and useful. I really enjoyed working with the entire group. And our fruitful, productive debates, they have been a positive experience to me. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you very much for these comments and words of appreciation. They should go to the leader. I do agree with you. My experiences are quite similar. And Elomek, maybe I will comment on what Adler has said before handing over the mic to you. What's the advantage of this project? It was not overloaded with activities. It focused on 2 modules, mentoring and the development of the chatbot. All of the other project activities were in a way subordinated to these goals. And here we could see in practice that the less is more. If we can focus on less deliverables, but try to do our best to produce them as well as we can, the work is more satisfactory to all of us. And now, Romek, over to you.
Ja chciałem, żeby nie przedłużać.
So, not to prolong, I only wanted to thank you for the opportunity to work with you on this project. I wanted to give my thanks to all of the social partners, to Dominik, to Maciek, to our colleagues from employers' organizations, because sometimes the most difficult discussions are also the most productive ones. So, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you in this new formula. Work on the chatbot for me personally was very interesting, and I believe there is a huge potential when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence and new tools in this context, not only to talk about them and to describe them and the possible applications to workers, but also, as English people say, to lead by example. So to say how this technology can be creatively applied. And I hope that we will be able to continue our work on that in the future together. So thank you very much. I would still like to continue, and I hope to see you all again. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you from the CMIT side. We really, and I think throughout the presentation and the comments that the discussions that we have had, social dialogue is really at the heart of what CMIT is all about. And so a good social dialogue and a good climate to discuss things and to be able to share and work together as social partners is really important. So we are very glad that we have been also a partner in this project. And yeah, let's do everything together to promote social dialogue in EWCs, but also in other fields as well. Thank you.
Serdecznie dziękuję
Thank you very much for these two kind words summarizing, I believe, our session today. Well, the only thing that's left for me is to join these kind comments. So I would also love to thank all of the partners for the intense work and involvement throughout the duration of our project. And I also want to thank our project leader who invited us into this partnership and enabled us to work on the mentoring program and on the chatbot, and who made this work today possible. So I'd like to thank Formac, who has been supporting us a lot, Małgosia, Daniel, Miriam, Alfredo, a marvelous representation of Formac. Thank you all, a heartfelt thanks. It works because of you, and you know that well. So I would also like to thank the translators, interpreters, without whom we wouldn't have been able to talk at all. We wouldn't have been able to understand each other's points of view. And I will now pass the mic to the project leader because it is the project leader who has the last word, and then the technical announcement at 4 o'clock lunch. And this is something that cannot be moved, so please do not come downstairs before 2 o'clock.
Okej, ja tylko powiem tak na wstępie, że zrobiłem sobie
So
tutaj
let me just tell you that I took many notes from the 2 days of our work, and I was trying to do my best to prepare my final speech, but you have already exhausted everything that I wanted to say. So let me focus on saying thank you, experts, Maciej, Dominic, who has moderated our discussion. It is important that we have somebody to learn from. This entire project was based on knowledge sharing, and we don't have enough knowledge. So I believe that we will not stop here, and every subsequent project will allow us to go even deeper into this topic. So I'm waiting for the translation of this new directive. We have talked about a very important issue, implementation into national law. So we have one EU directive, but I know from my own experience that the German implementation was much more favorable to workers than the Polish implementation. So when we were establishing an EWC in my company, we based it on German law because it was more favorable. So we need to monitor the way in which the directive will be put into national law in specific countries. And I would like to thank Formac. We've been working for so many years. Alfredo, Małgosia, thank you. We hope that we will have 2 more decades of fruitful collaboration. So thank you, Daniel, for effective and efficient technical support. And I would like to thank our interpreters in Krakow who didn't have to come here but have done excellent work. I would like to thank all of the interpreters from all of our languages. I believe that we have already exhausted our agenda for this meeting. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all of the participants from all of the countries, and I hope that we will meet soon in the context of yet another project. So one more thing, I wanted to ask all of the delegates from Poland here to appreciate the fact that we have with us also our colleagues from Ukraine. We keep supporting them. I believe that all of us support Ukraine, and the fact that you are here with us gives us just a glimpse of the bright future when we will be in one union together. So all the best for all of us. Thank you.